This is not life. This is sickness. Order me to die.
I see no reason to go into detail in this episode. I barely have the will to even talk about it. It's one thing to watch a series you once loved become this terribly written once or twice every week, but it's another to watch each one constantly, for days on end, just for the sake of a wee video review. I said it once, but I'll say it again. There's pretty much nothing I could bring up about this episode I haven't already said about a previous episode. I could bring up the blatant disregard for the established fanbase by the lack of thought and care put into the inconsistently written character of the Doctor.
Go back to the TARDIS, Graham.
No.
If you kill him, I can't have you travel with me. That's if you even live. I have to lay down the rules if someone's new. Also, don't cut that back to me. Our rules change all the time. Every action has consequences.
These are yours, Doctor.
I didn't mean it like that. So annoying.
I could bring up the disconnect between the characters and story from the wasted significance that is the companions.
Which were what? He's targeting her.
Oh yeah, why do you care all of a sudden? According to you, I was never good enough for your nan anyway.
I said that a long time ago, Grandad.
Yeah, and I've been waiting too long for that at all.
Maybe.
I could bring up the terribly paced and dull dialogue from the absolute uninteresting and shoehorned in secondary characters.
What kind of a word is that?
It's better than stubble, mate.
If I can't do it after all these years.
Trust in yourself.
I could bring up the immense mismanagement of the alien threat and what wasted potential they were given.
What every living creature wishes for. Revenge.
I could bring up how the series compares to its previous ones and how inferior it is in every way. I would even argue that in terms of story and structure, it's lesser than this series' previous episodes. This is what you get when you slap the tone of a Doctor Who finale on top of a cookie cutter baseline story. The episode is about the Doctor responding to a distress signal, because of course she does. They land and come across a survivor of some sort of squabble that previously happened, before finding out that Tim Shaw was alive. Basically. So they head to his fortress to try and stop whatever evil deed he was up to. And then they stop him in the end. What, you thought there was more? You thought they were going to lose? Of course they're not going to lose. They've been perfect throughout the whole series. There's no way they would lose. They haven't lost yet. They haven't even been wrong. It's... What were you expecting? That's right. You heard me. Tim Shaw is back. The best villain in the series. The second best villain in the series. Ever since episode 2, it was clear that the Stenza, Tim Shaw's species, were going to come back in some form. I was hoping we would get to know more about the Stenza, perhaps by introducing another Stenza, because I felt there was good potential in what the species were capable of. We sadly don't get to see any new Stenza, but we instead get the return of Tim Shaw. I liked Tim Shaw as a basic evil alien in the first episode, but in this episode he's not nearly as developed as he should be. He's basically the same character he was in the first episode, except he has a grudge against the Doctor. I wish I had more to say, but I'm really struggling to find anything interesting about him. He's an angry alien that's out for revenge by threatening the destruction of a few planets, including Earth. Dr. Claw has more depth than this guy. It's so frustrating when a show doesn't capitalise on what they've already established, the way the Stenza are described in the first episode, and seeing what they're capable of doing to an entire planet in the second episode should be explored and conveyed through the character of Tim Shaw. But all I see is a mediocre bad guy lacking any of the characteristics used to describe him. Yes, he was able to manipulate these two humanoid aliens into serving his every will, but I'm more blaming that on the stupidity of these two than Tim Shaw's intelligence. Oh yeah, at the beginning of the episode we're introduced to two aliens, not the first to look like humans in this series. Henya and Harnymore. What are their names again? I can't remember. Their names are as memorable as my interest in either of them. They're introduced the moment the episode starts, and they speak in expository fluff that tells us nothing that will mean anything until 25 minutes in the episode, by which point we'll forget the scene ever happened. Tim Shaw appears for some reason, and tricks them into believing that he is God. I'm not kidding. Though, judging by this woman's reaction, I wouldn't be surprised if she just bent over backwards for him the second he opened his mouth. Right after Tim Shaw appears, a time-lapse is shown to us through text. To go over why such a little thing is so shockingly horrible would take too long, so I'm just going to write everything here that explains what makes it so horrible. Let's talk about these so-called Uks for a moment. They're shown to us as very powerful dimensional engineers. Her words, not mine. I went back to this particular part of the episode to find out what they were exactly, and didn't get much out of it. Basically telepathic aliens that live a very long time. This is what we are shown what an Ux in training is capable of. Yet it is not utilised at all in the episode beyond what Tim Shaw tells us happened off screen. Basically, the Ux became his faithful servants, did whatever he told them, creamed everyone that stood in his way, and in the end tries to get them to destroy 5 planets. The Doctor tells them not to, so they don't. The end. You thought Tim Shaw was undeveloped? The Ux have the development of a boiled egg. There is a baseline character arc in place here about faith and how it can be misplaced, how you should question authority and all that. But what gets me is that this woman would be so gullible and naive to believe a specimen such as this, who looks like 100 children with loose teeth bit Paramount Sonic the Hedgehog, is a benevolent ruler who has their best interest at heart for over 3,000 years. Why should we care about these characters who can do anything and can outlive most living things, getting themselves into a spot of bother? The problem of this mainly stems from the scale the episode is trying to depict. The stakes, the amount of time it takes place in, the power of the characters, their lifespan, and so on. It's just too much to take in, especially in a series as restrained as this one. You could replace these characters with a supercomputer for the Doctor to reprogram, and the story would be the same. Well, except for the bit about not following orders without question. Unless those orders come from the Doctor, of course. After the gang find out Tim Shaw is back, they rush to his fortress to free the hostages.
Through the battlefield, onto the edifice. That was our destination.
We're not gonna go through there, are we? No one in their right mind's gonna go through there.
Grenades, code breakers for doors. Also, a bomb.
What happened to never do weapons?
It's flexible, Creed. Doors, locks, walls, buildings. Fair game. If it can be rebuilt, I'll allow it.
No, you stopped me trying to shoot the sniper bullets before.
You were new. I have to lay down the rules if someone's new. Also, don't quote that back to me. Our rules change all the time.
Oh. Right, so when the Doctor said
No. Guns, never use them.
she didn't actually mean what she said. She was just setting the ground rules for Ryan, who was new at the time. Except, those rules don't matter because, quote,
Our rules change all the time.
her words, not mine. By and large this series, the Doctor has always behaved as if guns are bad, unless they're not. She's ignored it when they actually help her, except in those times where they pretty effectively solve the problem better than she did. You know, when I took issue with the Doctor lecturing Ryan in episode 2 about the gun, I thought it was just a one and done dud. I didn't expect the rest of this series to contradict itself week after week this badly. And it looks like the writers realised this as well, because here they are, trying to backtrack on their own stated morals while failing miserably to keep their own main character's integrity intact. And it all could have been avoided. It all could have been easily avoided if they had just proofread it all. I already mentioned before that the Doctor is a character that doesn't always have the answer. If we think back to another finale some 13 years ago, blimey, I'm getting old. The Doctor is faced with another hard choice to make about a doomsday weapon. He is faced with the dilemma in which he is able to wipe out the Daleks and save the universe, but at the cost of killing everyone on Earth. He spends the whole episode preparing the weapon for that fateful moment, and when the time finally comes where he has to make his decision...
What are you, coward or killer?
Coward. Any day.
Up until that point, the Doctor had no idea what he was going to do. He thought he might have to. He even thought he could activate it. But when push comes to shove, coward. Any day. Maybe it wasn't the right choice. Someone could argue that it was the wrong choice, and that sacrificing the Earth would be worth it. But the episode makes it clear that it's the Doctor's choice, and we understand why he made it. We've seen him with his back against the wall, with nowhere to turn back, knowing he'd have to make his choice with massive consequences. Sure, in the end, things turn out fine, but the point is the Doctor makes his choice before he knew any of that would happen. He was faced with an impossible choice, makes his decision, and is prepared for the consequences. If it was this Doctor, she'd make the weapon, say she would never use such a thing, then microwave the Dalek Emperor. Oh, whoops. Too early for that one. The difference between these two Doctors is that the 9th Doctor doesn't know the answer, and admits he doesn't. The 13th Doctor always knows the answer, because the answer is what she needs it to be.
Our rules change all the time.
But at least it clears up one thing. All that time spent grandstanding, batting people over the head with how to approach conflict the morally right way, means...
nothing! Absolutely nothing! Stupid! You're so stupid!
So now, if ever in the future the Doctor tells us the best way to get out of an impossible situation, I know that I can safely ignore her, because at any point she can move her own goalposts and change her own morals to keep her morals intact.
Our rules change all the time.
She's the sort of person that would cheat at Connect 4 if it meant she'd win. Then why would I want to follow her to war? So this is our so-called hero. Quite fittingly, for the first time this whole series, she faces dissent in the ranks.
For us, everywhere we've been, all the adventures been amazing. But if that is the creature from Sheffield, I will kill it if I can, for what it did to Grace.
Go back to the TARDIS, Graham.
No,
I won't let you do that.
you ain't gonna have a say in it.
You're better than this. You are. You have to be. If you kill him, I can't have you travel with me. That's if you even live.
I understand.
No, you don't. We're gonna rescue hostages. Anything that compromises them is dangerous. And if you kill him, you become the same as him.
I ain't having that.
I'm serious, Graham.
You know what this series was missing? More of the Doctor being condescending to someone. Of all the things the Doctor should be understanding of is grief. The Doctor went through 4 whole series full of grief. When Graham tells the Doctor his truthful, honest feelings, the Doctor should be the first to console and explain to Graham that revenge isn't going to help, simply because she's already been through all that. Of course we don't get that. Instead we get the Doctor telling Graham to go stand in the corner and think about what he said. It's a shame too. This scene could have been a very relatable and heartwarming exchange between the Doctor and Graham. Graham's choice to kill Tim Shaw is an extreme one, but a choice I believe this character would make. Probably because he's the only character I like. I'm not suggesting that Graham's choice in the matter is the correct one, though I do find his behaviour regarding Tim Shaw to be appropriate and somewhat expected given his character. Plus, conflict between the Doctor and one of her companions can be very interesting. Though by this point, it's expected that this series would botch up an obvious opportunity like this one. It isn't even a surprise anymore. What potential there is in this dynamic is buried under awful choices and poor writing. Instead of the Doctor keeping Graham close to her, knowing he's got beef with Tim Shaw, she instead leaves that responsibility to Ryan, a character that's about as useful as Yaz is in this episode, and risks Graham walking face to face with Tim Shaw on his own, completely unprepared. Which is gonna happen, is it? Yep, there you go, that's it. That's exactly what happened. There is some sense in having Graham and Ryan together, but these scenes feel like they should have happened well before this episode. There's only one moment between these two that I was convinced there was a shred of chemistry between these two.
My point. They're trained soldiers, and they couldn't beat him, and you still think you can take him?
Oh yeah, why do you care all of a sudden? According to you, I was never good enough for your nan anyway.
I said that a long time ago, Grandad.
Yeah, and I've been waiting too long for that at all.
Maybe, but you got it now. We're family. And I love you.
What did you just say?
I'm not saying it twice. Don't pretend you couldn't hear me the first time.
I'm telling you what she used to tell me. Be the better man. Please.
At least, it's good until you realise how much better this scene would have been in the episode prior to this one. There, it would have made sense for this conversation to take place, but here, it's an excuse for some needless drama. It doesn't even end there with poor Graham. After he saves the hostages and falls back from the rest of the crew, he comes face to face with Tim Shaw. Graham fires on him and shoots him down in cold blood. Nah mate, you wish. Turns out Graham can't bring himself to kill Tim Shaw. Yeah, I was totally on the edge of my seat when this kind old codger was going to execute a massive alien Sub-Zero in cold blood. Then I guess Graham decides he was just going to die? Because he stands there as Tim Shaw blows his hand at him. Luckily, Ryan comes and saves the day just in time. Then Graham actually does shoot Tim Shaw.
Yeah, but just the foot. Just in the foot, just to shut him up. Don't tell the doc, she'd be livid.
So Tim Shaw lays there in defeat at the hands of Ryan and Graham. Even though they're not going to kill him, and he himself knows this. Like a moron, Tim Shaw is then trapped in his own stasis cage, probably ripe and ready to cause more bother if he ever decides to get out. And in terms of what the episode offers, that's about it. I mean, there's still other things. There was Yaz. She didn't really do anything. There's a new character with a funny name introduced. He was okay, though rather underutilised. Common with the actors this series. The Ux joined the Doctor in the end and helped save the day. It was obvious that was going to happen. The episode ends with the Doctor and gang going back inside the TARDIS, just like any other episode. Another day, another alien menace taken care of. Or not. This whole episode is a complete mess. Not only does it continue to alienate the hardcore fans of the show, but it offers everyone else a boring, tedious, badly written story with very few likeable characters to root for. As a finale, this is easily the worst finale in the entire modern Doctor era. No, not every finale fell through perfectly, but they at least tried. There was an urgency to these finales, as well as a clear vision that resonated throughout, and each one kept trying to outdo the one that came before it, year after year. I suppose what made the original finales more satisfying was the story arcs throughout the series. Whether it be Bad Wolf, The Crack, or whatever, there was something to notice and keep track of in the background. The finales, for the most part, usually ended in answering these mysteries and made it all come full circle. It was basically a hook to keep you watching and was satisfying when everything fell through. What hook is there in Series 11? There's no arc that's gripping anyone. Yes, you could argue that the arcs we do have in this series are more character related rather than story related, and I would be fine with that, but the character arcs have no depth to them. They're so basic and predictable. Ryan and Graham had pretty much the only arc throughout the series, and even then you know exactly how it's going to turn out. To be truthful, I don't think I would really have much of a problem with most of this if it weren't for one specific thing. This Doctor is really bad. I don't mind Jodie Whittaker herself. I'm sure she's a lovely woman. But she is stupendously miscast as the Doctor. Probably the first ever miscast for this character. In terms of acting, I'm not sure whether she's phoning everything in or trying her hardest from what material she's been given. And because of that, it comes across as fake and awkward a lot of the time. I wish they could have experimented with Jodie's portrayal of the Doctor in the first few episodes to see what stood out best for her, but they just seem to go through this series with no interest on developing who this Doctor really is. Unlike every modern Doctor before her, there's no hidden layers beneath her surface level disposition. Though I'm not so bothered about her performance as much I am perturbed about the character she's been written as. It seems like the writers tried so desperately to make sure everyone likes her, but either forgot or didn't bother giving her any flaws. I'd hate to say it, but the way this Doctor is written wouldn't be out of place in a self-insert fanfiction. Think about it. She's very clever, she's pretty, she's always on top of things and knows what's going on, everyone loves her, and those who don't are depicted as bad or Trump, or at the very least, come round to liking her at the very end. Worth noting, the only time she gave way to anyone, he died. Worst of all, she never loses, or at least never has to work hard to succeed. This isn't how you make a likeable or relatable character. You can't just fall back on what was already established in the series before. I liked all the Doctors before. At least I grew to like them very quickly. But you can't just plunk anyone in the role with any old characterization and expect people to connect with the same character regardless of what you do. Which really should have been addressed before filming even started, because this series was made with a new audience in mind, and I can't see how any of them would want to follow this shallow character. Making very dumb comments and references to historical figures isn't a personality. Relating back to this episode, the scene where Graham confesses to the Doctor is not the first, but a good example of the Doctor's confused morals. Let's talk about this for a moment. Tim Shaw has killed many people in the past. Though he was stopped by the Doctor, he was ultimately spared by her. When they meet again in this episode, he hatches a very long-term plan to destroy the Earth as well as several other planets. I think by this point, it wouldn't be out of the question to consider whether the universe would be a safer place if he was dead. Again, I'm not necessarily arguing that killing him is the best course of action, but given all the information the series presents me with, it's a conclusion which I'm highly left to consider given the results of his survival. Let's look back at episode 1 and try to make sense of all of this. Tim Shaw has killed many people, as shown by his victim's teeth on his face. He goes to Earth and kills a bunch more people. That's bad. He implants DNA bombs inside the Doctor and her companions. That's bad. The Doctor thinks that Tim Shaw can change. That's good. Tim Shaw doesn't change. That's bad, I guess. The Doctor uses DNA bombs on Tim Shaw. That's good? Well, at least it's karma. Construction worker guy knocks Tim Shaw off a crane. That's bad. Tim Shaw survives. That's bad. Tim Shaw enslaves a race of beings with godlike powers. That's really bad. Then he kills a bunch more people for over 3,000 years. That's bad. The Doctor and gang embark on a mission to stop Tim Shaw. That's good. Graham says he's going to kill Tim Shaw when he gets the chance. That's good. Wait, that's bad? What? The Doctor marches to war with a rucksack full of bombs. That's okay. At least at this point in time, the Doctor told me herself.
Our rules change all the time.
Tim Shaw tries to destroy 5 planets. That's catastrophic. Worth bringing up in light of that previous point. Tim Shaw has not changed. That's bad. Tim Shaw tells the Doctor that she is responsible for this. He's not wrong. The Doctor is confronted with these hard facts. That's bad, ignore them, quickly, don't listen! You heard in that last take, I just hit my finger on my microphone and it really hurt. That's bad. Graham confronts Tim Shaw with a gun. That's bad. Graham decides he can't kill this genocidal maniac. That's good. Graham and Ryan incapacitate Tim Shaw. That's good. With a gun. That's bad.
Yeah, but just the foot. Just in the foot, just a
Graham and Ryan lock him up. That's good. Let's just hope he stays in there. Otherwise, it might be bad. Maybe now, Tim Shaw will have time to think about what he did and change as a person, while he's sitting in the naughty corner for another 3,407 years. Oh, what a shambles. How am I supposed to learn morality from this? A lot of this aforementioned bad stuff seems to have happened because of the Doctor's belief that individuals can change for the better. It's not a bad sentiment in itself. If someone is worthy for redemption, it seems only fair that they should be able to redeem themselves. The problem is, what is there about Tim Shaw that suggests he will ever have a change of heart?
My wife died because of you.
Good.
And what happened then? Well, on Ranskoor of Kolos, they say, Tim Shaw's little heart grew 3 sizes that day. His actions have definitely crossed some line. If they wanted to tell a redemption story with Tim Shaw, that's fine. But, well, for one, they didn't do that. And 2, it's too late now. It's worth reminding you people that it's been 3,407 years and he still hasn't changed. If anything, he's worse because of it. The Doctor insists on lecturing construction worker guy and Graham about how it is not okay to kill him. However, if he was dead, how many innocent lives could have been saved after the Sheffield incident? And that's the problem here. Is it ever okay to murder a murderer? It's an age-old moral conundrum that no one really has an answer for. Except, this series reckons it does. It concludes, no, it's not okay. Now, taking a side like this is fine, but the story in question never does anything to justify that. We're just supposed to accept it. Despite all the implications that maybe it would be better executing the guy. Look, if I was in this situation, I don't know what I would do, but that's the point. And I probably won't ever know unless I am confronted with this situation. And even then, I still probably won't know until well after the deed is done. And maybe I'd choose a different path if ever I was confronted with this situation again. It's such a morally grey issue, but the episode with Tim Shaw doesn't seem to treat it that way. And in treating it the way it does, it seems to imply that it's better for the guilty person to live, even if innocent people die. And just to muddy the waters a bit more, the Doctor does consider killing the two Ucks to save the Earth at one point. She Deus Ex Machinas her way out of it in the end, of course, but the point is, she considered that it might be an option at all. Does she ever consider the same with Tim Shaw? No. This is why this Doctor doesn't work, but it's also why this whole series doesn't work. Tim Shaw isn't the only time the Doctor's done something like this. For example, in episode 5, she lets the Pating survive, but does nothing to address the implication that it'll eventually become hungry again and start terrorizing other people. In episode 4, the Doctor seems to value the spider's life above anything else. Sure, they're innocent victims of what happened to them, and are just acting on instinct, but they're dangerous, kill people, and aren't going to change their nature. The Doctor never, at one point, gave us a complete alternative on how to deal with these spiders in a humane way. Yet when Jack Robertson shows up and shoots the mother spider dead, the only option that has touted in the entire episode, we're supposed to think that he's the bad guy for doing so, just because the main characters tell us they don't like that idea. Not to mention that these so-called heroes claim to formulate a more humane solution, which involves locking the spiders in a room where, based on what the episode establishes elsewhere, they will inevitably suffocate and starve to death. In episode 8, King James attacks another genocidal alien war criminal so irredeemable that it revels in its own criminal status and was about to murder him, and the Doctor, moral crusader that she is still a little bit peeved with him. In episode 3, the Doctor talks about how horrible the Vortex Manipulator is, but she doesn't reprimand Ryan in any way after he uses it on Krasko, despite the Doctor giving Ryan a dressing down for that kind of behaviour in the previous episode. The Doctor is never called out for any of this, save for that scene in this finale, which is a whole mess in itself.
Our rules change all the time.
Every stand she takes on an issue is treated as gospel, even when it completely contradicts one of her other stances. You don't even have to look back to other Doctors to see how paradoxical she is. I already mentioned arachnids in the UK. If you want to see firsthand how annoying the Doctor's moral spiel gets, watch that. In fact, don't watch it. It's terrible. Instead, watch my review. In fact, watch all my reviews. Please? I promise they're good. Again, please. I'm not desperate. That's what's wrong with the structural integrity of the series. Sure, social issues are no stranger to Doctor Who, but this one in particular seemed to advertise itself as ready and raring to tackle the deep, relevant, controversial, real issues of the day, more than most series. But its approach to these issues are as black and white as you can get. There is always an absolute 100% morally righteous solution to a problem, while another suggestion is reprehensible and shouldn't be considered. There's always a bad guy who is either completely responsible for these issues existing, or they're the bad guy because they disagree with the Doctor's approach. But that's not how real life works. So often in life, there's no black and white. Anyone with a shred of life experience knows that everything, nature, morality, everything is so complicated. We've all come across problems like that. For us, they seem like they have the most obvious solution in the world, and decry others when they don't see it our way. This ranges from very small issues to all-encompassing concepts such as religion, politics, and culture. There's no one right way of seeing these things, and there's never going to be. Certainly you can argue your point of view. Hopefully you can discuss it with other people with civility, despite your differing viewpoints. Of course, there's issues in life which most people accept as morally wrong, but even then, It's rarely ever just black and white. Values change. So many things seen as unacceptable today weren't seen that way a number of years ago. But it's ridiculous to dismiss the past just because previous generations held on to values that we find outdated. If you think yourself superior to your forebears because you think your own values are better and you don't consider yourself vulnerable to more questionable belief systems from your privileged position of hindsight, at least consider this. You only think that because previous generations learned that lesson for you. And someday, you and I may be looked back upon as the old-fashioned barbarian with beliefs that no longer have any place in this world. This is bigger than you and I will ever be able to comprehend. But Doctor Who Series 11 seems to think that it is indeed above all of this. Even if it's unintentional, so little care has been put into the handling of these issues that are not and may never be so clear-cut. And it does a horrible job of justifying its own stance, usually by outright ignoring any attempt to justify it whatsoever. I myself would argue that this kind of approach can be really harmful and exacerbate so many of the societal divisions it claims to want to fix. Do you think any racists stop being racist because they watched the episode Rosa? Or that people stopped supporting Donald Trump because they watched Arachnids in the UK? Or that pro-gun advocates have changed their minds because they listened to anything the Doctor told them about guns this series? If anyone who worked on this series, or anyone that happens to agree with the views espoused, genuinely thinks that these shallow and broken stories are the be-all and end-all, or the great expose of any of the respected issues, you're just deluding yourself. But at the end of it all, I don't think Doctor Who Series 11 is actually a danger to anything. Because the main issue I find isn't the one-sided undertaking of these complex issues that it presents as so important. That's only one of the many symptoms plaguing this whole production. It's boring. I'm convinced that very few people working behind the scenes truly cared about what they were doing. No passion, no creativity. I'm not convinced any of their scripts weren't their first draft, or that any thought went into its main characters, villains, or that there was any strong effort to make anything entertaining. Doctor Who has been on a decline for a few years now, but Series 11 had absolutely no excuse. It had a whole new production team working on it. I could at least possibly pin down many of the problems in the Moffat era to him working on the show too long and becoming fatigued. Why then does Series 11 feel like everyone's tired of it already, when they're brand new to the job? That's where I think all this comes from. The countless plot holes, the astonishingly empty characters, the bare bones and pathetic villains, the predictable and intransigent approach to social issues. It's all there just because it's easy, and nobody felt the need to go one step further. It's truly sad to see a show like Doctor Who in this state, and not even the lows of the preceding series sank this low. Dare I say, it's unacceptable that this made it to television. I'm still a big fan of the franchise, and I'm still going to continue enjoying it, and I'm sure at some point in the future it will climb out of this rut and get better. It's not like this is the first time Doctor Who has been in a tricky spot like this before. But no matter what happens, I will never have a reason to return to this era of the show ever again. It offers me nothing that I can't get much better in many other places, and if the people working on the show don't care about it, why should I? At long last, the final bingo is upon us. You know, when starting the series review, I never thought I'd get to the point where I'm more invested in the outcome of Bingo than the prospect of planetary annihilation. But here we are. The final Bingo. Keeping track of all these actors in that trailer will finally be worth it. That, and I can finally make my point. Which I've already made in the episode 9 review. In this episode, we have Phyllis Logan as a major role, and Mark Addy as another major role. I know it might seem like the wrong choice, judging from how little I've spoken about these two characters in this review. Despite that, these two do still help the main characters to influence the plot enough to make them a major player in the episode. Right then, here's the moment of truth. Pop them on. Outstanding! That's incredible! We won the bingo! What surprise! Nothing. We just watched 10 episodes of the most boring sci-fi show in the world. Life is cruel. We get nothing! Though I can make my point now. Now, since this happened at the end of the first episode, I was very curious as to why they made the choice of replacing the standard Next Time trailers to an actor call. I made this bingo basically to prove how much of a dumb decision this was from the very beginning. The only reason I can think of that justifies this choice is perhaps that the characters these actors were going to play would be a massive contributor to the stories. That, or the BBC wanted social brownie points by showing off how diverse they were being, which is a terrible compromise to make from the traditional Next Time trailers. Although, to be fair, the Next Time trailers themselves were pretty naff as well. Either way, here's our list of major and minor roles in the series. The majority of them are, right enough, major roles. Kind of. Despite these particular actors being major to the specific episode they're in, they don't bring out anything beyond what's in that episode. I didn't expect all of them to be returning or anything like that, but the question remains, why would they call out the actors in the first place then? But we're not that interested in those actors. We're more focused on these actors. There's a handful of actors here that I would consider minor roles for having little to no impact on the particular episode they're in. Now, I wouldn't really care if there wasn't other actors who hadn't been called out that have had a much bigger role to play. Take Hannah's actor, or Eric's actor. Even the pregnant alien had a bigger role than these characters did. It's just so confusing to me. It was a terrible way to advertise this series, and it's even worse now that I've watched it all. I guess I can only conclude that Series 11 was so boring that not even the people who made it could think of an interesting way to advertise it. So all they did was tell us a few of the people who were going to be in it at some point, as well as the ethnicity of some of the people who worked on it. Well, it's plain as day now that this series was going to be just as bad as it was before it even started. It even tried to warn us itself. The review's done now. You can leave if you want. The rest of this video is just going to be an update for the future for anyone who's interested on my channel. I'm going to try and do this all in one take, so it's not going to be scripted. Well, it's a bit scripted, but I'm going to try and do it all in one take, so sorry if I fumble. Right. Firstly, I want to give my brother Sam a big special thank you for helping me fact check and rewrite a few of the later reviews, especially, you know, the bigger ones I was doing. Though I'm not entirely sure how to compensate him properly right now. How about this? Check out his channel. It used to be ours, but since I made this one, he just sort of adopted it. But again, Sam, thank you for your input in my scripts. They wouldn't be the same without them. Right, secondly, I'm aware of the New Year's special episode, Resolution. I'm not going to be reviewing that one next. I will get to it, just not right now. I'll be doing other videos instead, until the time is right. Because believe me, I would love to talk about that episode. There's so much things that would be so funny and so good to talk about. It would make for a great video, and it'd just be a nice way to just put a big bow, tie a big neat bow around the review series I've been doing for Doctor Who Series 11. So maybe I'll do it perhaps in another In Case You Care video. Yeah, and similar to that, I'm not going to be reviewing Series 12 either. Series 11, the reviews I did there, it was mainly a small project I wanted to try out doing, but it ended up taking way too long to finish. I really overestimated myself with this one, and my approach to it wasn't the best, I must admit that. I have far too much things going on in my life, and I can't commit to something as comprehensive as this again. You know, I can't do another review series like this, at least not yet. And I keep saying that in the end of a lot of my videos, but really, there's just I've no way of getting these videos out quickly yet. I haven't, you know, been able to manage to do any of that yet. So that's mainly the reason I'm not going to do Series 12, but also because, quite frankly, I'm sick of Doctor Who by this point. It's been a whole year since the series came out, and I've pretty much been constantly watching these 10 episodes every month. You know, one episode every month. And, you know, in a series as boring as Season 11, you can imagine how insane that makes someone. So I just need a big break from Doctor Who. And this style of video as well, because they're not as quick as they look. And they're a bit quick. They're more quick than normal, but they still take time. And they're just not as fun to make as the other videos as well. However, if and only if Series 12 piques my interest, I may do a very quick overview of what I thought about it. Maybe at the end of another video as a bonus or something. As expected, there probably won't be another video for a while. However, I do have something special for anyone desperate to hear more of my voice. More content from me, that's always good. Me and a friend of mine over at the Gamebreaker Mills channel did a let's play of the original Doom, the one from 1993. If you head over there and give him a watch, it'll be in the description as well. It would be very much appreciated. I promise it's a right laugh. You'll love it a lot. And hey, if you're still watching up to this point of the video, thank you for putting up with my voice. It's appreciated that you'd be able to listen for this long. So thank you. Consider subscribing, liking, commenting. You know, that's how YouTube works nowadays. I hate begging for them, but that's just how you gotta do it these days. But hey, if you like what you saw, thank you. That's all for now. I'm heading off. I hope you have a great day, and take care.